Hello, people of YouTube. On today's special report, ZAG Media releases Miraculous Ladybug's fan work policy and guidelines. We're going to go through all of these guidelines and tell you what they mean, and I will give my thoughts on them. My name is JD Shadow. The special report starts right now. Well, on the last episode of the special report, we had talked about possibly one of the nicest DMCA takedown requests or demand or whatever. It sounded more like a request and not exactly in the way that we would have actually thought it would be. Most people just file DMCA report to YouTube when the takedown notice. This was more like a request from ZagTunes to a few AMV makers of Miraculous Ladybug, saying, hey, this infringes with our trademarks and licensees. You might want to take this down, blah blah blah. If you do not know exactly what the situations were and what the worries were, I will post a link to the last episode of special report at the end of this video through annotation like I always do. But that made a lot of people worried about just what exactly would happen with the videos, what exactly the policies were, because this was the first time that anyone has ever been told one way or the other about their EMVs or videos. Well, apparently now on the 24th of March, we get a fan policy and guidelines chart that was apparently published on March 1st. Don't ask me why the delay took place, but whatever. That Thomas Estruck posted on March 18th, and a lot of different days to go around, but the bottom line is that there are 7 points of interest that ZagTunes, the publishers of Miraculous Ladybug, have actually, developers and publishers of ML, has actually implemented, and we'll go through these one by one at first, and then we'll talk about each one as they come about. Let's start with number 1. Please do not post any episode or clip longer than 2 minutes of Miraculous on an online streaming site. 2. Please do not upload or download any episode or clip longer than 2 minutes of Miraculous on a torrenting site. 3. Please do not produce, release, or sell copies of any episode or clip that is, again, longer than 2 minutes. Number 4. Please avoid posting fan art that would be considered R-rated, as we are generally an animated series for kids that is airing on Nickelodeon in the USA and Disney in Europe. 5. Please do not use any Miraculous IP, images, or assets to produce or sell your own merchandise without written authorizations in the form of a licensing agreement via ZAG America LLC. Now, the 6th and 7th one are just standard. Contact us at this particular email if you have a legitimate business inquiry. And 7, these policies and guidelines are subject to revision. And at the end of this, ZAG actually provides a footnote saying that, quote, ZAG or ZAG America LLC is the owner of Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir. Based on our ownership and legal obligations to our many partners worldwide, we need to ask for your cooperation. As this exclusive copyright owner, we control the rights to reproduce the work and to sell products in its image. As you know, this is an infringement of copyright law to use and commercialize intellectual property rights in relation to the whole or substantial part of the work, or to authorize such an act without the permission or license of the copyright owner. When this was first implemented, many people were worried about what this longer than 2 minutes was all about, and many people suspected that this was targeting AMVs, and a big concern came when it came to reactions and review videos. However, ZagTunes has actually cleared this up in a manner of speaking. Vivi Detta, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, emailed ZagTunes for clarification of what that meant, and she had this to say, quote, I actually emailed ZAG a few days ago about the 2-minute guideline just to clarify if they meant just continuous uncut footage was disallowed or anything at all, and thought the response would be useful to others. The clips longer than 2 minutes, which aren't allowed under the ML fan guidelines, apparently refer to any footage longer than 2 minutes in length continuous without cuts or edits. I believe this means that Miraculous fan videos of any length have the okay as long as you don't use more than 2 minutes of uncut footage inside it. I'm just so glad I don't have to awkwardly cut down the massive video I'm working on right now, Ors. Okay, so let's first of all get to the scare that a lot of people had when ZagTunes first went and sent these notices out to a few people. We don't know exactly how many were sent this particular email or YouTube message or whatever, but one of the main issues was is the fair use? When do you cross the line into fair use territory using these AMVs? Obviously, copyrighted music is a big part of whether or not that might be fair use. You might not be able to get away with the music part of it, but perhaps the cutting up of different clips from the show would be enough to say, hey, wait a minute, that might be transformative work. Maybe there's a gray area that we're not discussing here. And we have seen that some producers and some distributors are very, very aggressive and will use a DMCA takedown request as a way to censor viewpoints. Because when you file a YouTube DMCA claim, you're not actually filing a real DMCA. It's not something that the courts recognize as a real DMCA claim. The reason why is because if you file a real DMCA claim and it ends up being false, I'm not completely sure about the actual penalties, but they're pretty freaking severe. You really don't want to go down that route unless you know for a fact that you are going to win, and you know to the best of your knowledge that they have actually, the person that you are accusing is actually committing a form of DMCA violation. So in a sense, a YouTube DMCA takedown request is not an actual DMCA claim as it pertains to the US copyright law. Now, what this basically meant was that this scared that reaction videos would be targeted, and that is when you have to think as to whether or not reaction videos are a form of review videos and are absolutely protected under fair use doctrine, because those can also be buyer's guides to inform people whether or not a series that's being reacted to is worthy of their time. And if you have some sort of following and a person comes along and says, oh, you don't have the right to express your opinion about this show, or we're going to use the scapegoat of, hey, you used the clips without our permission, take it down in order to censor somebody else, then it's kind of easy for somebody to see beyond the veil. It's pretty easy for people to see that straw man. It's really easy for people to see what you're really about. And if you have a following, they're not going to be too happy. They're going to side with the person who is giving that review or that reaction. How do you think that 9 times out of 10, or maybe even 10 times out of 10, if you file a counter notice after someone issues you a copyright strike, they are not going to sue you? It's because they don't think they'll win in a real court of law, because at that point a real DMCA would be in effect as far as I'm aware. And if it ends up being a false DMCA claim, there's a lot that could be done to the person who's issuing the DMCA request. Not good. So that's why you hardly see anybody go that additional step to sue somebody, which is the only way to have your video be kept off of YouTube once you file that counter notification. But the 2-minute guideline, which is 2 minutes of uninterrupted, unedited, uncut footage, seems to be the norm for most of what YouTube bots will look for before a red flag is thrown out. I heard from VizMedia that's how Toei Animation does it. That's how Toei Animation flags Sailor Moon Crystal videos, if there's 2 minutes of uninterrupted, unedited footage. But here's the thing, Toei's bots are more or less going and flagging videos anyway. Either that or they're going and striking them manually, which is another situation altogether. The problem with the YouTube bot system is that it is not looking for whether or not your videos are cut or whatever. They're looking for a particular stretch of video length period of a particular copyrighted work. Is it going to catch it? You are cutting up the work. If you are putting just 30-second clips into a 30-minute or 3-minute long music interlude or musical piece or whatever, or if you're using it for a review and you put your different parts of the episode into your review or whatever, how is it going to differentiate between an episode dump, which is probably what they're targeting here, and somebody who's just doing a review or reaction or whatever? We have to be careful about that to make sure that YouTube knows the difference, assuming it can, or if they are going to use that excuse in order to take down reaction and review videos. We have to wait and see. But from what we see, from what I see of this so far, the 2 minutes of uninterrupted footage being a red flag, I think that might be a little bit standard. However, we do have to make sure that they are on the up and up about that. That is something that that worries me a little bit. Might put a little ease to people who might be wanting to do AMVs, although the copyrighted music is still iffy and whatever. I have no problem with them putting them up there, but again, it might be iffy to some people. The point of don't upload or download any episode or clip longer than 2 minutes on a torrenting site or sell copies of any episode or clip longer than 2 minutes is telling that that's probably what they're trying to target here, is full episode dumps, full episode torrenting. And you have probably seen that in several actions where that is definitely not protected under fair use. That third point is more or less going to be successfully enforced, I would suspect. The second point where you're targeting torrenting sites, that might be a little bit harder to enforce. I'm not saying they're right or wrong on saying that. I'm saying that given how gray area these torrenting sites can be and how defiant those torrenting sites are and how many there are, I think they might have a bit more difficulty in actually successfully enforcing it. I just think that it might be a lost cause to try to go after torrenting sites because many different entities have tried to go after them for years. Most recently Kanye West and the Pirate Bay, because he did something stupid with his latest album and he has an ego the size of Texas and he's probably one of the biggest douchebags in mainstream music right now, but that's neither here nor there. Fact of the matter is that I don't know if that's ever going to be completely eradicated. You're probably always going to have people who are going to pirate your stuff. And the other big thing that will make it even harder to enforce is the notion that we're talking about fan subs. We're talking about subs of episodes that are not available in the US yet. There is a gray area of whether or not those episodes would be available any other way before Nickelodeon airs them. Right now, we're under the mercy of when Nickelodeon airs the shows in the English dub. The problem here is right now there was that whole rumor that was going around, and I brought this up on my Twitter account, that Nickelodeon was canceling Miraculous Ladybug and they had to quickly squash that rumor. But the availability of certain episodes, the availability of the series is going to be brought into question if you decide to go after them. So it's a gray area that I don't know if they're going to be successful at going after. I can see where they're coming from. I can probably sympathize with them in some form of degree, but it's still going to be difficult to try to enforce that. It's just my take, and it's unfortunate, but it's basically a reality there. It's just me saying the reality of the situation. They're probably never going to be able to fully enforce that to the degree that they desire to. The number 5 point here, and I'm gonna go to number 4 in just a second because that's one that's really getting to be here. The number 5 point where it says you can't sell any of your own merchandise using the IP of Miraculous, that is kind of a standard for just about every copyrighted work. I don't know why they decided to put that in here. Did they not have it in place before they even conceived this particular IP? I don't know why they chose to put this in there when it should be kind of standard. Did something specific happen to where they felt like they had to either reinforce that or put that in there, assuming it was in there to begin with? I don't know. I don't get why they decided to put that in there. That seems to be kind of understood, that you would want to go after people who are selling phony merchandise or fraudulent merchandise or whatever, unless they're talking about monetizing things like DeviantArt or monetizing your YouTube videos or whatever. Unless they're talking about that, they're saying images or assets. Perhaps they're talking about fan art, don't sell your fan art or whatever, but that's probably already standard, unless you're talking about monetizing your YouTube videos, which in that sense, you're going back onto the idea that, okay, reviewers are protected by fair use. You don't have to ask for permission in order to review a person's work. And of course, you have to determine what country's laws are going to be applied if you decide to sue somebody over something like that. Are you going to make the US copyright laws the precedent, or you're going to make your own country's laws the precedent? There is a lot of gray area that we have to explore when it comes to stuff like that. But other than that, I don't see why the 5th point really had to be in there, because it should already be understood, unless there was a particular incident that happened which made them have to at the very least reinforce it. Let's get to number 4 though, because number 4, which is talking about posting fan art that would be considered quote-unquote R-rated, as we are generally an animated series for kids. I don't think I need to tell you what Rule 34 sure is. If it exists, there is a porn of it, no exceptions. But in all seriousness, this is the one that I think is going to be challenged the most, and here's the reason why. They are saying would be considered R-rated. What are they considering to be R-rated? What is their definition of R-rated? Because we have seen in recent years, at least when it comes to video games, the past few years, that there have been certain groups of people who have deemed a certain thing in video games as vitriolic or perhaps misogynistic or too violent or whatever claim you may want to put out there in a video game. And the main problem is that it is all subjective. What one person thinks about a particular scene may not be what another person would think about that very exact same scene. And because of that, you need to consider the interpretation of what is R-rated. What is considered R-rated? Some skin showing, maybe full-on sexual innuendo, maybe crude humor, maybe double entendres, maybe nudity, or something along those lines. Maybe vulgarity, profanity, you name it. There's probably somebody who might think that you cross the line into R-rated territory. Is the word shit an R-rated word to you? Is the word fuck an R-rated word to you? Is blowing someone's brains out on a TV show R-rated to you? Let me tell you something. For a TV-14 show, Gotham gets away with a lot of shit. They do. In terms of violence, and I'm not going to spoil anything for that show because I believe you should be watching Gotham. It's probably one of the best shows on TV right now, but DC Comics has always been able to push the rating that their shows get. If you give them a TVY7 rating, they will test to see how far they can get away with things. It is something that is a conundrum on DC shows, and it is to say that, hey, a lot of people interpret different ratings in different ways of what you could get away with on certain shows that have a certain rating. And the bottom line here is that this, if it doesn't have a defined interpretation of what the R-rated is, it opens the door for someone to abuse that. And it's opening the door for someone to come along and look at a piece of work from ZAG Tunes, look at a piece of work saying, I don't like that, I don't like that being on there, I'm gonna say it's R-rated. And they take it down, and through this, because they don't actually define what R-rating is, they could probably be able to get away with defining it. Now, the other problem that I'm seeing out of this is that you're putting a set of rules to a particular part of that community that you're not putting to other parts of the community. Like, if someone wants to make a fan art that they've worked so long on, and it might be pushing the envelope of a PG-13 to an R-rated piece of work, which, again, we don't know the definition in their eyes what R-rated is. Why should that particular person be punished because they decided to add a bit of violence, a bit of blood, maybe a few choice words being put into that piece of work, while someone else who is making something that doesn't have a whole lot of blood, a whole lot of innuendos or whatever, doesn't have to worry about being hit with a DMCA or copyright dispute. If you're going to enforce the rules on one particular group of people, you have to enforce the rules on everybody. It makes it fair. If you're not going to enforce the rules on people who make these quote-unquote approved fan arts, you have to let the people who might make a bit risque fan arts go. You have to let them slide. Now, I do understand this is the artist's wishes and all of that, but how far can you take that until you also go into the realm of fair use, and when you start infringing on creative freedom of the fan artist that you are criticizing? There was a issue that J.K. Rowling had about Harry Potter fanfiction, which she was alarmed by the pornographic and adult nature of some of the fanfiction she was reading. And this is a person who is very supportive of Harry Potter fanfiction communities. There were some cease and desist letters sent to sites hosting this kind of material, but no one really knows, at least I don't really know whether or not that went anywhere or not. And the reason why it probably didn't go anywhere is because you have to think about the creative freedom of the fan artist and whether or not they have the right to make that sort of fan art, make that sort of fan fiction, make that sort of fan work. If you're going to post a particular set of rules to one particular part of that particular community, and I'm using the word particular a lot, so sue me, you have to make it available for everybody. because some of the people who might want to post mature rated material are putting in the same amount of work as anybody else is. So why should they be punished just because they're putting in more mature oriented material into their works? I don't think they should be. I don't think that they should be punished for that. But then again, I'm not the one who's making the rules, but I do think it opens the door for someone to abuse that if they do not at the very least define that. Then you can probably debate whether or not that infringes on creative freedom. If that infringes on creative freedom as opposed to whether or not it's a person's wishes to not have that sort of material on a website. My latter point is just my personal belief, and we can debate that all day if you want. The bottom line is that they have to at least define what they consider to be R-rated. They have to make it a bit clearer, or else you know what's going to happen. Someone's going to say, oh, that's R-rated, when they just want that taken down because they want to spite the author or the artist, or they're just trying to make a scene or be overly sensitive about a particular piece of work or whatever. Because what's stopping someone from spiting an artist based upon that? What's stopping someone from trying to sabotage a person's gallery or whatever by saying, hey, it's R-rated, you take it down, and you don't know what they're defining R-rated as. So yeah, that's going to be something they have to consider revising at the very least to make it a bit more clearer. But at least for right now, the AMVs and the reaction videos are more or less safe. But we are going to be the checks and balances, of course. We're going to make sure they hold up to that end of the bargain. If something comes along that says, hey, they are not being quite truthful about who they are targeting as forms of videos, of course we're going to call them out, just like we would call out any other company that decides that protecting their bottom line is more important than protecting consumer goodwill. Of course, no one wants to do that, especially to a particular company that they like, and I think ZAGTunes is handling this the right way. They're handling this thing at the very least with a degree of class that I've yet to see any other company do, but that doesn't mean that they are off the hook by any stretch of the imagination. I am genuinely hoping that we don't have to ask to ZAGTunes, where's the fair use? But that's going to do it for this edition of the special report. Go and hit the thumbs up if you liked this video. Tell me your thoughts about this particular story down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I love to hear both sides of the arguments on my channel. Keep it clean. Put away the pitchforks and torches, mind you, if you're disagreeing. Thank you so very much for watching. My name is JD Shadow, and of course, that just happened.